Thanks for tuning in to Tapped In. If you're feeling stuck or overwhelmed on the mats, come find your direction in our DFM Coaching BJJ School community. Now, let's get started.
Welcome to Tapped In. My name is David Figueroa Martinez, and today we're going to be discussing the black belt illusion, what really happens when you get promoted. And this is going to be specific to me, and I'm not speaking for everyone who gets promoted, but the things that I kind of felt and experienced now, I think almost 4 years in, 3.5, whatever it might be. I think it's 4 years. And there's this moment where you get called up to get your black belt. And if you're lucky, everyone's applauding and everyone's excited for you. It's a massive accomplishment. It feels like it's going to be life-changing. And you have dedicated however much time, most people 10 to 12 years to get to this point. Getting to your black belt is a massive accomplishment, and it shouldn't be ignored. It shouldn't be glossed over. It shouldn't be simplified, but at the same time, it's not this big moment that people kind of think it is. Nothing drastic changes after that moment. You do have encounters that shift. You do have a new title. People will probably call you professor. You get people look at you a little different, but nothing really changes within your life. So when I got called up and I got my black belt, I had this moment of like all these things going through my head, and all that whole idea where you are dying and everything flashes before your eyes. Similar to that, there wasn't any one moment that was clear enough to look at or remember or process, but it was just like a shift of a bunch of things all at once. And there's this weight that almost feels like comes off a little bit, where all the struggles that you went through and everything that you had to endure and push through and overcome and figure out, and all the injuries and all the mistakes and all the shitty moments that you kind of had to live through just kind of fly by in a moment, and you feel them all at once. That's how I felt. Not everyone else is going to feel like that, but I'm just my experience. And in doing that, I felt like I was starting to get a little bit emotional. It did not come out in the form of tears. And I'm not saying that I'm judging anyone for crying. I think the majority of us who get to that point probably would cry. And for me, it was a moment that almost brought me there. I wasn't trying to necessarily fight it or brush it off because I got to be a man in front of everybody. It wasn't that. It's just it didn't quite get to that level. And it was just a little different. It was a little, it's different than any other promotion because it's in essence your last. And sitting there, or standing there, I should say, and has your professor say some kind words, people are cheering, people are recording, and they're strapping that belt onto you. It feels like the other promotions, but it also feels different. It feels like a culmination, and we're going to get to that in a minute. But it feels like, well, I'm done. I got to the finish line. But in reality, after you get your first couple of rolls in, nothing changes about you necessarily, unless you allow it to change you some way. I found that the responsibility shifted a bit. And that's not saying that I didn't hold responsibilities beforehand, because I had been teaching in some capacity since I was a blue belt. And that was either helping the coach as their uke and kind of helping people figure out technique and, oh, you're doing it wrong, put your hand here, that type of thing. Or whether it was me picking up kids' classes, I think just after I turned purple belt. So I had been in that field or in that lane for a really long time. And one of the things that my professor said at the time of my promotion was, this guy, he has been acting like a black belt long before he even got to this point. And that for me was true. I had spent a lot of time studying my coaches and how they taught. I had spent a lot of time correcting. I had spent a lot of time in roles that allowed me to carry some kind of responsibility. So by the time I got to black belt, I wasn't out of my depth, but black belt gives a different level of responsibility because everyone's looking to you for that guidance and that correction. They're looking to you as the role model. the role model. When you're a brown belt, they look at you similarly. They're going to ask questions. They're going to watch how you conduct yourself with people. Your eyes are on you the higher you go up. But at black belt, it's just a different gaze. They expect you to know everything. They expect you to have it all together. They expect guidance from you in some way. So it's almost like, in essence, being like a celebrity, in a sense where you can make or break someone's day. And if you meet a celebrity that you've wanted to meet all your life, and you come up and you want to shake their hand, get an autograph, maybe a picture, and they're rude to you, it sours that relationship forever. But if they took the time to, hey, bro, how you doing? Blah, blah. Here's a signed whatever. Let's take a selfie together. And they go out of their way. It also cements their relationship with you and whatever that person's doing. There's a little bit of that when you're a black belt. I can never, in my opinion, I feel like I can never have a bad day. And in a bad day, I mean, take my frustrations out on someone else because I came in from a really bad work environment or stressful work environment, and I came in and I was short with somebody. I can't have those moments. There's a responsibility to shift that happens at that moment where you are now a representative of the art. You're not just a student. You're not just someone who has been training for 8-9 years and you're still a brown belt or a purple belt or whatever it might be. You're now a black belt of jiu-jitsu. So you have to carry that mantle everywhere you go. You're not just a representative of your gym. You're not just a representative of your instructor. You're a representative of the art. So that is a shift externally. And not everyone understands it. Not everyone lives by it. Not everyone even bothers to take on that responsibility. And some people they're shitty human beings and they don't care. For me, I have taken it as a legit responsibility to where I'm somewhere, and I'm not the most friendly person. I'm not an extrovert. I'm an introvert. Crowds kind of bug me sometimes. I'm not great with strangers. So I've had to kind of work on certain things for myself because I understand at some point, this person who comes in, maybe they've been training a couple of months. They may not even have seen a black belt yet. In some schools, it's like that. Or they hadn't seen a visiting black belt or a black belt that wasn't associated to their gym. So now you're carrying the responsibility of trying to represent the gym and your instructor and the art. I found that I felt like I have to help people more. There's a weight of now it's time to give back. And so I go out of my way to assist. I go out of my way to answer questions. If I see something, maybe as a purple or brown belt, yes, I would have said something more often than not. But sometimes I would worry at the time, like, oh, they don't want my opinion. And then now I'll see something, and depending on what it is, more often than not, I might chime in and be like, hey, put your hand here. And they'll ask, oh, why is that? Because and I explain very quickly, I don't want to take up a whole lot of time. And then they start working and it's like, oh, shit, that works. So I like doing some things like that. So there's a heavy responsibility when you get to black belt that's unlike any other belt. There's also this idea that you know everything. And part of the responsibility is being honest and admitting, hey, this isn't my forte. This isn't my subject that I really know. I'm not a subject matter expert in that specific guard, that sweep, that submission. But I do know, hey, Billy over here, he's really good with that position. I think you should ask him questions about it. So there's also a responsibility of being honest about what your limitations are and how good you are in certain positions and how some positions you're not great in, period. But it's sometimes hard to do. So it's your responsibility to be genuine, to help people, and to give back. There's also, which I mentioned before, this weird view of like, I've arrived. You have not arrived. There is no arrival. There's no superpower. There's no getting to the end of Mario and you beat the level. It feels more like, if anyone's ever done this, when you beat Mario and you flip the game and then you redo it and some of the characters have changed. There's no longer the Mushroom Men. There's now like the hard shells and some other people. Now, I understand it's a dated reference because I'm 44 and I played Super Mario on the NES and some of you have not. We used to be able to flip a game, which means beating it all the way to the end, replaying it, and there's a shift in the game. That's what happens when you get your black belt. You have not stopped learning. You don't know everything. There's large chunks of my game that I feel are completely underwhelming and underdeveloped, but overall have a really sharp game. I have elements where I'm a subject matter expert, where I can tell you, hey, I know this position through and through. It's my shit. And then there's parts where I'm like, hey, this white belt over here can teach me a few things. And there's been times where I've gone to open mat and I've rolled with someone and they just have this crisp berimbolo or this crisp attack on the legs. My weakness is attacks on the legs. I am not great at it. I came from a traditional school. We did not do a whole lot of leg stuff. And when I experienced that, I started asking questions. I don't care if they're a white belt, blue belt. Do not care. There's something that they know about this position that I do not. I want to learn. So there is no arrival, physically, knowledge, or even emotionally. I think sometimes people think black belts have it all put together and they know everything. They do not, knowledge-wise or even emotionally. I still have insecurities. I remember when I got my black belt, even now sometimes I'll put on a workshop and like 4 or 5 black belts come through and they got degrees and I got one. And that sometimes is a little bit intimidating, and there's a little bit of like an insecurity of me where I'm like, oh shit, what are they going to learn from me? And I sometimes have to tell myself and remind myself, we're not all subject matter experts in everything. And if they came, it's because this topic was interesting to them, or this topic was a position where they didn't feel strongest. So it's my job to then try to help with that. So yes, there's a huge illusion of like, I have arrived and this is the end for me. And it's really not. I have learned far more now than I had probably in my first 10 years. I'm learning details now that I hadn't learned before. I'm learning different approaches. A lot of my learning is also like instructor based. Like I know jiu-jitsu really well and I'm still learning aspects of it, but the biggest shift, or one of, has been how I incorporate certain techniques when I teach and how I address or present information. So one of the things that I've started to add was situational based drilling or games. Another thing that I've added is simplifying how I teach. When I first started, I wanted to jam pack 3 or 4 techniques into a hour class, and that just doesn't work. So I stopped doing that. I do now 2. 3 if the class is understanding it, or 3 if we have a good amount of time. When I do a workshop, there's a little bit more involved because I think workshops are different. But for the class, I'm doing 2 techniques is my goal. And I'm trying to finesse the level of understanding that they have for these 2 techniques so they're solid enough that when I come back for the next class, whether it's tomorrow or the following week, I can build on that and set up the next steps or the next options. So my thing right now has been just learning how to teach better. And that part, I think, there's never a finish line there either, because there's moments where I feel like, okay, I know how to teach. And then maybe cultures shift, or you get a new generation of people in and they learn a little differently. So then you have to adjust for that. So it's a never ending thing. There's also an issue of like weight, the expectation of weight, or the weight of expectation, I should say. And the idea that sometimes students put too much on you as an instructor, and they think that you're going to figure everything out, that you know everything, that you have it all put together. And you're literally going through life trying to figure out your own traumas and your own triggers and your own issues. And they're looking at you like you got it together. And I think because a lot of students have not seen you through the ranks, like none of my students have seen me through the ranks. And when you don't get to see that process, you only see the finished, quote unquote, the finished model, which is the current model. And you can sometimes feel like they know everything, they got it together. But when you have come up through the ranks with another black belt and you both were white belts at one time, and you remember how the other one used to be, and you remember the mistakes and the issues and the insecurities and the moments where they wanted to fall apart and quit. And those details are missing oftentimes with students. So they just have this expectation that you just have it all together, and you really don't. You don't always win. Sometimes I get got, and I've said this on previous episodes. When I get submitted, I make a big deal of it, and it is not to like demean someone or make fun of someone necessarily or any of that, or even myself. It's I take off my black belt at the end of Q&A and I toss it to the person, and it indicates that they got me that round. Everyone sees it. And what I'm trying to break there is that there's an expectation that I'm going to always win. I'm not. And I don't want that weight on me, and I don't want that imperfect view of jiu-jitsu in someone else's eyes. So I have blue belts that sometimes get me. We train a lot together. We've trained a lot over the past, I think, 4 years together. So I have people that have been with me since they started, and they're getting ready to get to purple. I have people who got to purple already, but you know what I mean? So it's just this idea that, yes, they've trained for so long that you know the other person's game. And sometimes because you're training so long, that day you come in, you're a little tired, a little banged up, or you're preoccupied mentally, or you're working on something, or the other person was just on it. It doesn't matter. And they get you. And having that expectation that you're supposed to be the winner all the time is asinine. It doesn't help you. It doesn't help them. So what I do is I toss the belt and I let everyone know that I got. And it's just a way of breaking that ice and getting away from that mentality. And this is a training room. We're all going to get submitted. And sometimes you're going to get the black belt, and more often than not, they're going to get you. The other thing that I have enjoyed about black belt is that I have a freedom to explore whatever I want. Not always the case at all gyms. At the gym that I'm at, I sadly do not have a main instructor that comes down and I learn from regularly. But I do have an ability to just explore whatever I want at whatever gyms I want from whoever I want. So I have 2 workshops, one at Silly Dojo and one at Five Peaks. I'm probably going to add another one by the end of the year. Hopefully, I go to open mats. I train with the instructors at both places, and it allows me to pick up details that I wouldn't get at my own spot. It allows me to ask questions. It allows me to take a peek in different types of approaches and games and setups, and I get to chase whatever game I want. And there's a freedom in that. And sometimes there's also a detriment in that if you're not someone who can do like self-coaching, that it's a little harder. I'll admit I do miss having a legitimate instructor that I can go to regularly. There's a miss in that. But at the same time, I feel like I've gotten to a point where I could kind of piece things together myself because I've been doing that for so long. Anyway, so it's been fun for me to just explore other gyms. I love going to Five Peaks Open Mat on Saturdays because they get a bunch of black belts from outside of their gym who come in, and I just get to roll with different styles and different approaches, and it's a blast for me. And then the last bullet point that I want to touch on is there's a sense of legacy when you get to black belt. Maybe not right away. Right away, you're just trying to get your feet under you. But like you get to a spot where you want to create a lineage that means something. And for me, and everyone's going to change. It's going to be changed. It's going to be different for everyone. But for me, I want to create or foster relationships and cultures with really good people. Your jiu-jitsu is going to get better just because you're around me and because you're learning and you're coming to class regularly. But really my goal is to let or have or foster students who become really good people and are able to take what I'm teaching them, make it their own, and then start teaching at some point the next generation. And I want to be an example of being positive, being honest, and being emotionally intelligent enough that people who train under you feel like they can be themselves, that you can teach damn near anyone that comes through the door, that you can vibe and roll with anyone that comes through the door, whether that's competitively or as like a round that says, hey, this is my jiu-jitsu, but let's have fun. I want people who, if when I leave, and by leave, I mean the earth, I want to be able to have said that I did good work and my jiu-jitsu didn't make someone necessarily ready for self-defense. That's a given. Like, you want someone to be able to have the confidence to defend themselves and the confidence to insert themselves in a way that gives off confidence without being an asshole. I want to be able to say that I had students that it changed their lives, and it changed their lives for other reasons, not just like physically, but when they enter the office, there's a confidence there. When they do presentations, there's a confidence there. When they see something that's unfair in the office, that they can step in and say, confidently say, hey, this is unfair, and state their case with confidence. And those are things that I didn't always have at one point. So they're really important for me to kind of instill in other people. Because once I got into jiu-jitsu, a lot about myself changed, and I became far more confident, far more assured of myself. I don't have it all together by any means, but I've become far more able to speak my mind when I need to, state my case when I need to, show empathy for other people, not being a bully, not being an asshole. And those are the things that I'm most concerned with when it comes to legacy for me. Some people, they want to create world champions. They want to create the next generation of like guard players or this or guard passers, or they want to create a name for a system that they quote unquote invented or whatever. And then they're remembered that way. I want to be able to produce people who are able to make changes in their own lives, and maybe even further than that. That's what drives me currently. It's not medals, it's not titles, it's not any of those things. I teach hobbyists for the most part. Sometimes they compete. Sometimes they'll jump into a competition every once in a while, or they'll do one and be like, oh, that's enough for me. And that's perfectly fine with me. What I really want is people to see an environment that is encouraging, supportive, that laughs, that enjoys the ups and downs. My hope is that I've created an environment where people aren't worried about their next belt. I had that issue where I was worried about getting out of blue belt. I was itching to get out of purple belt. And when I got to black, I realized this is the last belt I will ever own. So I have to be driven by something different than the belts now. And my hope is, and I'm praying I'm doing a good job of this, is that I'm fostering, again, a community that isn't driven by the belts, and that the belts seem like just an afterthought. And they're coming for the community, and they're coming to laugh, and they're coming to enjoy life, and they're coming to get a workout in, and they're coming to get physical with someone else, and that they're not being driven by the belt. And I don't know if I'm doing a good job of it. I think I am, but it's hard to tell as an instructor. But that's my hope. That's my goal. And legacy wise, that's really the kind of jiu-jitsu that I want to leave behind. And I'm hoping it fosters a little bit of change. Sometimes you look at the culture right now and it's a little bit of a mess. And when I step onto the mats, it's the one time that all that disappears, and we could just be a community based around the community and the technique. If you have any questions, comments, would love if you would share this. Ratings are fantastic. If you are listening to this and you're a fan, and you can give us a rating on whatever you listen to this on, it would be great. You can reach me at dfm.2099 on Instagram and Threads, dfmcoaching.com. I also have a school community, DFM Coaching BJJ, if you want to add to that. It is completely free for the time being. Once it gets to a certain level, I'm going to start charging new members. But right now, I just want it to be something that is just centered around people who just want to learn, positive environment, and just foster that same thing that I'm trying to do in the gym, but in that community. Until next time, thank you so much.